Imagine this. You're in Atlanta, Georgia, in the sweltering summer of 1886. A man in a waistcoat is brewing up a sticky brown liquid in a brass kettle. He claims it's medicine, but really it's got cocaine in it, and he was about to invent one of the most famous drinks in human history, entirely by accident. And here's the kicker. The man who invented it, he barely made a penny, whilst the man who took it over, he turned it into a billion-dollar empire, while our poor inventor faded into obscurity. Oh, and the drink? It was supposed to cure headaches, but instead, it gave the world one of the biggest sugar addictions in history. Buckle up, this is the scandalous, slightly shady, and absolutely wonderfully absurd story of Coca-Cola. Welcome to the business scrapbook, where every business story, iconic founder, rivalry, and marketing genius comes to life. Now, before we crack this open, let me just say, this story has everything. Drugs, war, secret recipes, ruthless businessmen, and a dash of good old-fashioned marketing trickery. And it all starts with a man called John Stith Pemberton, a Confederate veteran who decided the logical career move after fighting in the American Civil War was pharmacy. Right, so John Stith Pemberton. If Coca-Cola was the blockbuster, Pemberton was like the troubled indie film that came before it. He was born in 1831 in rural Georgia, the kind of place where career opportunities meant farming, preaching, or probably dying of something preventable. But Pemberton was clever, properly clever. He trained as a chemist and pharmacist, which in the mid-19th century essentially meant part scientist, part witch doctor, and part showman. Fast forward to the American Civil War. Pemberton serves as lieutenant colonel in the Confederate Army. And during one of the final battles, he takes a saber right across the chest. And he survives, which is impressive. But the aftermath, little less heroic. He was in constant crippling pain. And here's where 19th century medicine shows its distinctive charm. The doctor prescribes him morphine, lots of it. Enough to make a rock band's tour bus look sober. And if you're thinking, that sounds like a terrible idea, you'd be correct. Within a few years, Pemberton was a full-blown morphine addict. But remember, at this time, morphine wasn't viewed as dangerous. It was viewed as, well, breakfast. So here's our man, ex-soldier, war-wounded, morphine habit, and still trying to run his pharmacy business. And in the pharmacy world, there's a lot of experimental brewing going on. Everyone's mixing herbs, roots, and exotic imports into tonics that promise to cure everything from dyspepsia to giving you nervous vigor, which is basically 1880s code for energy drink. So Pemberton's thinking, alright, I need something to help me get off morphine but still keep me functioning. Maybe even make me a little bit of money in the process. And that's when he looks towards Europe's latest craze, coca wine. This stuff is exactly what it sounds like. Red wine infused with coca leaves. And yes, coca leaves is where we get cocaine from. This is the 19th century equivalent of red wine with a side of energy drink. French chemist Angelo Mariani was already bottling the stuff in Paris and selling it to the great and good, authors, artists, even Pope Leo XIII. The Pope literally endorsed it and had a medal made for Mariani. Imagine the Pope endorsing an energy drink today. Pemberton saw the potential. He started experimenting, adding coca leaves to wine, mixing in the cola nut, sugar, spices, and flavorings. He wasn't just making a painkiller, he was making a party in a glass. The result? Pemberton's French wine coca, a heady blend of alcohol, cocaine, caffeine, and sugar. Frankly, you could probably run a marathon on it. And in the 1880s, it was perfectly respectable. You could drink it at lunch and no one would even bat an eye. It sells well. Pemberton has something here. But little does he know, his biggest problem was just round the corner. And it's not a competitor, it's a politician. So, Pemberton's French wine Coca is selling nicely. The Pope has basically blessed the entire idea of Coca drinks, and our man is thinking he might have finally found his golden ticket. But then, Atlanta decides to go full moral crusade mode. It's the mid-1880s and temperance movements are sweeping across the United States. Preachers, politicians, and the people who clearly never got invited to the good parties are demanding an end to alcohol. In 1886, Atlanta officially bans the sale of alcoholic drinks. And Pemberton's Coca wine? Well, wine is right there in the name. For a pharmacist who's already in pain, hooked on morphine, and running low on cash, that's terrible news. Imagine waking up and finding out your main source of income is now contraband. It'll be like if Starbucks woke up tomorrow and someone had outlawed coffee beans. But Pemberton is resourceful. He thinks, alright, if I can't sell booze, I'll sell a version without booze. Keep the coca leaves, they're still legal. Keep the cola nut for the caffeine kick. And of course, keep the sugar, because this is America and sugar is basically a vitamin. He heads back to the pharmacy lab, which I'm picturing as part Victorian apothecary, part mad scientist deck, and he starts tinkering. Out goes the wine, in comes plain water to mix the syrup. And the end result was a thick, sweet, caramel-coloured liquid with all of the invigorating effects, but none of the alcohol. And that's where the name Coca-Cola comes in for the first time. Coca for the coca leaves, and cola with a C instead of a K for the cola nut. Roll it around in your head. Coca-Cola. It's short, it's catchy, and it sounds medicinal, which in the 1880s was a huge selling point. Now, at this stage, it's still a syrup. Customers would go to the pharmacy, order a glass, and the clerk would mix a dash of syrup with water. They believed they were drinking a cure for headaches, fatigue, anxiety, digestive issues, and according to some ads, even morphine addiction, which is pretty rich considering what was actually in it. And yes, let's be absolutely clear, at this point, the drink still contained cocaine. Not a huge dose, but enough to make you feel perky. It's not just a pick-me-up, it's a pick-me-up and carry me 3 blocks type of beverage. Pemberton was advertising it as a medicinal tonic, but make no mistake, it is the 19th century equivalent of an energy drink on steroids. If you've ever seen someone chug 3 cans of Monster before an exam, you've basically seen the Pemberton customer in 1886. For Pemberton, this is a new lease of life. He's adapted to Prohibition, he's got a new product, and the pharmacy shelves were once again stocked with something people actually want to buy. But there's a twist coming. One of those small, almost accidental moments that changes everything. Because right now, Coca-Cola is just another syrup. But what happens next turns it into a sensation. At this stage, Pemberton's Coca-Cola is a syrup you'll buy at a pharmacy counter. You'll sit down at a gleaming marble soda fountain, the Victorian version of a coffee bar. The clerk mixes a measure of syrup with still water. You'll drink it slowly, feeling ever so slightly more alive than you did 10 minutes ago. And you'll tell yourself, it's probably good for my liver. It's pleasant, it's popular, but it's still a tonic. And it's not a drink that people would just order for fun. But then came the moment that changes everything. There are a few versions of this story, but the most romantic, and therefore the one I'm going with, is that one day a soda fountain clerk accidentally uses carbonated water instead of plain water when mixing a glass of Coca-Cola. This was an easy mistake to make. Soda fountains were called soda fountains because they dispensed carbonated water. Fizzy water was the novelty of the era. Chemists had been fizzing up water since the 18th century, and by the late 1800s, it was the go-to mixer for everything. And so, the soda fountain clerk plops in the syrup, adds fizzy water, and hands it over to the customer. And the customer? Well, they take a sip, and suddenly, the medicinal tonic isn't just medicinal anymore. It's refreshing, it's crisp, it dances on the tongue. It's like drinking a Victorian medicine and accidentally discovering it's also champagne. Word spreads, people start ordering it, but with the bubbles please. And very quickly it became clear that this isn't just a tonic. This is a drink you'd want on a hot day. This is a drink you'd order without a headache just because it's nice. Now, I'd like to imagine Pemberton heard about this and had a little light bulb moment, although in his case it was probably more like a flickering gas lamp, where he realised he had stumbled onto something far bigger than he had intended. But instead, he didn't really grasp how big it was yet. To him, it was still just a health tonic. The adverts of the time were all about curing nervousness and exhaustion and male troubles, whatever the hell those were. But the reality was, customers kept coming back because they were enjoying the taste, for the buzz, for the cheeky fizz we all know that made it feel like more than just a medicine. And here's the irony, the single moment that transformed Coca-Cola into a global brand happened entirely by accident. If the clerk that day hadn't had a mix-up at the tap, we might all still be sipping flat Coca-Cola in pharmacies, pretending it's good for our digestion. But the stage was set. Coca-Cola had gone from a niche medicinal syrup into a drink you could crave. And if there's one thing the next man in our story understood, it was this. Cravings can be monetized. By 1888, Coca-Cola has its fizz, its catchy name, and a loyal base of customers who either believe it was curing their nerves or simply didn't care as long as it tasted good. On paper, Pemberton should have been set for life. But here's the snag. Pemberton is, well, not great with money. Between the war injury, morphine habits, and a general tendency to invest in ventures that never quite pan out, he was perpetually skint. And he was in poor health too. The war wound never truly healed, and the morphine addiction certainly wasn't helping. So when offers came in to buy partial rights to Coca-Cola, Pemberton listened. At first, it was just little bits here and there. He sold a third to one investor, a slice to another, like someone carving up a birthday cake at a party they no longer wants to stay at. Enter Asa Candler. Candler was not a chemist. He was not a war hero. He was a businessman. And not the nice man with a shop kind. The spot an opportunity and squeeze every drop of profit out of it kind. He can smell undervalued intellectual property the way a bloodhound smells bacon. And Candler sees Coca-Cola not as a tonic, but as a product. Not as a medicine, but as a brand. And he knows that that brand could potentially be worth far more than Pemberton ever realizes. The details of what happens next is a little bit murky. And by murky, I mean possibly dodgy. Some accounts say that Candler bought out the other investors fair and square, whilst others suggest that there was some, shall we say, creative paperwork involved, including one contract to Pemberton where allegedly he signed without realizing that he had given total control over to Candler. Either way, by the time the dust settles, Candler owns the whole shebang. Name, the formula, the rights, everything. And how much did he pay for it? Around $2,300, which even adjusting for inflation is the business equivalent of buying a castle for the price of a used hatchback. And Pemberton? He's out. He dies later that year, still broke, still addicted to morphine, and totally unaware that the drink he invented was about to explode into one of the biggest commercial successes in history. Now, Candler could have just kept selling Coca-Cola in pharmacies as a respectable tonic, but Candler wasn't in the business of respectable. He was in the business of ubiquitous. He starts a marketing campaign that is downright aggressive for the 1890s. He paints Coca-Cola signs on every available wall in Atlanta. He hands out branded calendars, pens, and in a stroke of genius, even free drinks coupons. It's the type of thing you'll try once, like it, and suddenly find yourself just happening to be near a soda fountain every afternoon. Under Candler, Coca-Cola stops being just a drink and becomes a habit, a lifestyle, a product that lives rent-free in your brain. And this shift from medicine to mass market indulgence is what changes Coca-Cola from just being a quirky story to being the case study for branding. Of course, Candler wasn't done yet. His next move would cement Coca-Cola into culture forever and keep a certain secret locked away for over a century. Now, with the formula firmly in his hands, Asa Candler has two priorities. One, make Coca-Cola the drink that's everywhere, and two, make sure no one else can make it. Now let's start with the second one, because that's where the legend of the secret recipe begins. Candler is obsessed with keeping the exact formula under wraps. Not just because he's paranoid, although he is, but because he understood that secrecy itself is a brilliant marketing tool. He understands that humans love mystery almost as much as they love sugar. So he keeps the recipe written down, but only a few trusted employees ever see it. Rumour even has it that no one single person knows the entire formula, each one just has a piece. You could work at Coca-Cola for over a decade and still not be able to make the drink on your own. It's like the plot of a heist film where the map is split into 3 separate parts and kept in different cities. Eventually, the written recipe ends up in a locked vault at Atlanta Bank, and later at a fancy display vault at the World of Coca-Cola Museum. Now, whether the whole vault thing was just a publicity stunt or not, that's the point. Candler turns a simple list of ingredients into a corporate holy grail. You can basically write a Dan Brown novel about it. Coca-Cola's secret formula became a legend, locked in a vault, guarded like it's the crown jewels. And by 1904 they removed the cocaine in it, but it didn't matter, by then people were already hooked. On the taste, on the sugar, on the brand itself. Meanwhile, Coca-Cola's reach is expanding like a sugar-fueled octopus. At first it was sold exclusively at soda fountains, but then came the next big leap: bottling. Suddenly you could drink it at home, at work, on the train, on the beach, and the brand stops being tied to a location and it's tied to a feeling now. Candler also leans hard into advertising. Coca-Cola isn't just refreshing, it's delicious and refreshing. The ads show smiling families, happy workers, healthy children, all sipping a drink that still contains enough sugar to make your dentist cry. It's sold as a drink that is for everyone, anytime. By the early 20th century, Coca-Cola was marching across America. The company was sponsoring events, plastering its logo on billboards, and even pushing the message that drinking Coke is as natural as breathing. And here's the clever part: they made it cheap. Dirt cheap. Cheap enough that it's an everyday habit and not just an occasional treat. Then came the global push. Coca-Cola during World War II partnered with the US military service. American soldiers can get a Coke anywhere for just 5 cents. Now the army, while shipping guns and boots overseas, they were also shipping bottling plants. It's genius. Coke became the taste of home for American soldiers, and when the war ended, the bottling plants stay put. They're embedded now in over a dozen countries. They're not just a drink anymore, they're a symbol. By the time the mid-20th century rolls around, Coca-Cola has established itself as liquid Americana. Sweet, fizzy, and proof of the country's ability to sell a dream in a bottle. The irony is the man who invented it never lived to see any of it, and the man who did see it spent decades guarding a secret that is probably in your fridge right now. So there you have it, a drink born from war wounds, morphine addiction, cocaine leaves, and sheer marketing genius. John Pemberton wanted a painkiller, Asa Candler wanted a fortune, and somewhere between them, the world got fizzy brown liquid that now sells over 1.9 billion servings a day. So the next time you crack open a Coke, just remember, you're not just drinking a soda, you're sipping on a little bit of history, a dash of controversy, and if you believe the marketers, happiness in a bottle. Though between you and me, it's mostly sugar. And that's the story today from the Business Scrapbook. Subscribe to keep uncovering tales behind the brands you love or love to hate.